If contract reviews bounce around Slack and email, approvals stall, and no one can answer where is this stuck, then this session is for you. In the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll run our out-of-the-box contract review template. This is no custom build, just to show how legal teams can standardize intake, route work to the right approvers, and close the loop with a clean audit trail. Most of our delays start at intake. Requests arrive as Slack pings or vague emails, so legal has to hunt down for basics like contract value, counterparty, or due date before work can even start. From there, triage is manual, tasks bounce around people because ownership isn't clear, and we lose hours just figuring out who should take the first pass. Meanwhile, versions live everywhere: email threads, shared drives, and personal desktops, so we spend more time reconciling drafts instead of reviewing terms. Even when a deal progresses, approval paths aren't codified. Threshold rules live in people's heads, which creates rework and leadership drive-bys later in the cycle. And because none of this is tracked end to end, visibility suffers. So when someone asks, where is this stuck? The answer is usually, let me check. And this combination of things creates preventable delays. Our end goal here is to standardize intake, codify routing and thresholds, keep versions in one place, and make sure that the status is obvious in real time. This is for legal operations and in-house counsel who want predictable routing and approval control. We'll submit a contract, auto-route based on value and approver selected, request revisions, and then finalize. Before we click into anything, here is the end-to-end map of the contract review process. Think of it in 5 movements: the intake, the department due diligence, parallel approvals, leadership thresholds, and outcomes with notifications. We start at enter contract data, which is going to be the standardized intake form that gathers the minimum metadata legal needs, such as type, value, approvers, due date, and the draft file. So triage isn't a guessing game. Next, we have the pending departmental approval, and departmental approval gives business a quick checkpoint to confirm these details before legal touches it. This reduces back and forth later. Assign legal and finance is the auto triage moment. Based on the form, the engine stamps ownership, priority, and SLA, then fans out into pending financial and/or legal approval. Here, the workflow runs legal approval and financial approval in parallel. That shortens the cycle time and makes ownership explicit. If either side requests changes, the flow drops to revisions required and loops back cleanly with the revision form. For higher risk or higher value deals, leadership threshold kicks in. You'll see COO approval or CFO approval appear automatically when value exceeds policy. No tribal knowledge required. An additional CFO approval step can be enforced above a second threshold. And finally, we can converge on outcomes. So contract accepted, contract not accepted, or revisions required. Each terminal path triggers the right notification, notify of decision, or notify of rejection, so stakeholders get closure without manual emails. And with that context, let's submit a live request so you can see how the data you enter at intake drives routing and approvals automatically. I'm going to submit a request. This is the stock template intake. As I fill it out, notice we capture the few fields that legal always chases. That's type, value, approvers, and due date. Those drive the routing. I'll select service agreement. I'll check legal and finance. And notice how as I'm checking these, it makes these fields required. And I'm going to set a due date. On the right side, this magnifier opens our directory to pick specific approvers so we avoid email tag-ups later. And adding the draft file keeps the document in one place instead of living in an email thread. Finally, the contract value is required, so threshold rules kick in automatically. I'm going to set a value of 250,000. I'll do the next prover here. I'll choose a department because it is required. And I'll give the contract a name. As soon as I submit, the form data hits the rules we just configured. Because finance and legal were checked, the engine spins up both approval tracks in parallel. You'll see the request owner, the SLA target, and priority stamped on the task so nothing sits in limbo. If the value crosses a threshold, leadership steps are added automatically. We don't rely on memory or side emails. This is how we move from please review to this is who owns and by when. We can see more information about the assignment of who owns this particular task at this point. If we go over to the request detail tab, we can see a summary of the entire process, meaning where it's at, who it's been completed, who completed it, the time, and when was the last update. Open task shows all those steps that still need to be completed. Completed forms show what's been completed already, and we also have an option to view those forms that have been submitted. And this access is also visible to the user who is going to be reviewing for approval, so they have the context they need to make a decision. And under task history is the reason really why auditors love us. We have a detailed log of all the actions completed, when they were completed, by who, any changes made, and as I mentioned earlier, we can see where the system has assigned the next step over to an individual within the organization. Because this is going to be a departmental approval, it's going to come back right to me since this workflow is in development mode. At this point in time, upon submission of this and the assignment of this task, I should have gotten an email. This notification lets the next person know that there's action to be taken and an approval has been requested for the following request. And the request details can be customized. There's different fields and placeholders that we can use to set up a proper and relevant notification. And there's also an option to approve the request via email. Going back to the workflow itself, if I return to the next task, this is what I would see as the user who's responsible for the departmental approval. And I have the option to review the original form, so I have all the context I need, and then option to accept or send back for rework. For this example, I'm going to click accept. I will submit, and we can see it moves on to the next task, which is financial approval. Let's go over to the flow view so we can see how far we're moving into the process and where we're at. So I just completed the departmental approval. Now it assigns the legal and finance users. So the first two steps are about getting basic due diligence from the business. From there, the template splits into legal and finance in parallel, so we're not waiting on one lane to finish before the other starts. Upon completing the departmental approval, we can see that there's two new steps. One has been an approval from the financial department and one from legal, and both have been assigned to a user. Notice the contract value here is set to $250,000. If we go back to the flow view, we can see that that is a threshold that will trigger CFO approval. So upon completing the COO approval, the financial approval and the legal approval, it should trigger a fourth approval from the CFO. Let's approve in financial first. I still have the option to review the form that was submitted, so this person also has all the context they need. I will select an acceptable option, just type in a comment and submit. Now we see that there's one open task left, which is the legal approval. I'm going to run this task and just do the same thing. And upon submission, we'll see that the flow moves into the COO's approval. As the COO, I can continue to review the original form. And I can choose this as an acceptable request. I can reject the contract, or I can send it for rework. And then the rework will send it back up the path. As the COO, I still have the option to review the contract to make sure that I have all the context I need. I'm going to select acceptable and submit. And if we go back to the flow view, we can see that that additional threshold has been triggered. Because the request is over $200,000, the actual value being at $250,000, it triggers the threshold for the CFO's approval. So I will select acceptable, submit, and at this point, the flow has been completed. We've moved on from all the approval tasks into a notification to the requester of the final decision, and this ends the process. And at each task's completion, users will receive an email to notify them of action taken on this step. So as you can see, I've received emails for each approval task, assuming that I am the assigned person for each one of those tasks. So I've got the financial approval, legal approval, COO, CFO, and the completion email to let me know as the requester that the process is complete. But let's say the COO does not approve of this. And while they don't reject, they want to send this back for revision. We have an option for every workflow to reset tasks or redo the task completion. This allows us to redo tasks if needed, and I can select a different option than the original. And before I submit, we can see that we're back at the COO approval step. This time I'm going to select rework required. I'll submit this, and we'll see that there is a new contract review task. At this point, the process has been assigned back to myself as the original requester, letting me know that there are items that I need to review before I can submit again. And as the rework is complete, it goes back down the path to the next step and notifies each party involved where the process is and what the next step is. To wrap up, you've seen how a standard intake, parallel approvals, and clear thresholds turn contract from a series of emails into a predictable workflow. Requests have owners, SLAs, and an audit trail by default, not as an afterthought. If you want to try this today, you can import the contract review template into your instance, swap in your approvers and thresholds, and run a pilot with real requests. For additional steps, you can also add e-signatures and filings so executed agreements land in the right repository with consistent naming.